Okay, I think we're normal. We have some folks saying hello, so I'm going to say hello back. Welcome, everybody, to our panel discussion for National Small Business Week. Happy National Small Business Week to all of you. One of my favorite weeks of the year because I love small business and I love small business owners. And I am joined by a great panel of folks who also love small business owners. And I'm very excited to introduce them to you and have some wonderful discussion with them along the way. So I am joined by Jim Boland, who is a CPA and VP of a business consulting organization here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Donnelly Boland and Associates. Melissa Peters, who many of you may know, is with Legal Shield. She's the Senior Network Vice President for Small Business. We have Anita Bertina, a longtime friend and CEO of PowerLink, an organization providing advice and mentoring to small businesses. I'm just so happy, Anita, that you're here with us today. And then David Bacon, we had to get at least one other lawyer on the panel because we don't want to be outnumbered, right, David? David is a partner at Davis Miles, a law firm that has offices in Tempe, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And he's got about 40 years of experience representing small business owners. So I'm going to let all of our panel members introduce themselves to all of you, tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to jump right in with the biggest challenges that we all think small businesses are facing right now. So, Anita, do you want to go first? Introduce everybody.
Sure.
Introduce yourself.
My name's Anita Bertina. I am the founder of a couple of companies and also now the national director of an organization that helps small business called PowerLink. And I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. David, you want to go next?
Been a practicing attorney for over 40 years. I've been a Legal Shield attorney for approximately 12 years with Davis Miles. My background is originally out of upstate New York, and I've been engaged in business litigation, document preparation. We take any and all of those calls from our small businesses here at Davis Miles, and happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Jim, how about you?
Yep, Jim Boland. I'm a CPA from Pittsburgh. Like Mike said, work in a local Pittsburgh CPA and business consulting firm that focuses on the in-house accounting and operational support for small businesses, nonprofits, and technology startup companies. So happy to be here today.
Thank you. And Melissa, you need no introduction, right? A lot of people know you.
Well, I think we have a lot of our Legal Shield family on here visiting us today, which is so exciting to always see because they're out there talking to the business community for sure. So my name is Melissa Peters, and I have been with Legal Shield for 24 years. And today, very proud to be in a position to lead small business sales for the company and training and development. So it's always a pleasure to be on here with you, Mike.
Thank you. Now, Melissa talks maybe to more small businesses than maybe David or I talk to small businesses. She's really got her finger on the pulse of what's going on in the small business community. So maybe you're the best one to start us off, Melissa. What do you see as one of the biggest challenges that small business and small business owners are facing right now?
I'm going to have to say hiring, right? Hiring and keeping those employees. Every business owner I'm talking to, it seems like something comes up about either finding quality employees, keeping those employees. What can they do to obviously do that? But of course, when it comes to protecting the business, because that's the discussion I like to have with them as well, there are so many unknowns out there today, Mike. The business world has really been turned upside down over the last couple of years, and there's so many unknowns, and they're looking for resources, they're looking for partners, and for me, my passion is always going to be, well, we're your partner. But really, the top of mind is always about right now. It's always in conversation about I need to get good employees. I need to keep these employees. Yeah.
Yeah. And Anita, what are you seeing out there? What's a big challenge that small business owners are facing?
So I think I would agree with Melissa, but maybe with a twist. So a lot of people, when they start a company, what we see is, and I actually had the same experience myself. When you start, maybe the hardest decision is when to hire the first employee, right? So, and what do you have that person do that you're not already doing? It's a huge decision, and most of us make the wrong decision the first time. So I'm hoping maybe I could share today some things we learned about how to make that first hire a good one.
Oh, that's great.
Because it's a big problem.
Yeah, Melissa and I joke every once in a while. We say that your cheapest, best first hire is a lawyer. Buy a small business plan from Legal Shield. It costs you about $1.50 a day. And now you've got a lawyer on staff as your first employee. That's pretty economical. That's what I would say.
Absolutely.
Very economical. Yes.
Jim, how about you? What are you seeing out there? What's a big challenge facing businesses today?
Yeah, so I was going to go one of two directions here, and hiring and finding the right people was one of them. So I'll go a different route. But I think in a somewhat related way. I think the biggest thing that we see right now with a lot of our small business and technology clients is the adoption of technology platforms and just technology in general, and the unfamiliarity with those platforms and what's out there, I think, is sometimes scary for people. But given the difficulties in hiring and finding quality people, there are technologies out there that reduce the need for increasing headcount. And so a lot of what we do with our client base is educate them on the different software platforms that are out there, how they integrate with each other and talk to each other, and how they can leverage those sets of tools in a way that eliminates the manual labor that has historically been needed to do certain administrative or back office functions. So that's and I think everyone at this point is aware of ChatGPT and OpenAI, and the innovations that are evolving there at a rapid pace. And so I think the sooner that business owners begin to adopt technology and really lean into it, the better off they'll be long term.
Technology, I completely agree. You're preaching to the choir here. David, what are you thinking? What do you see out there as a huge challenge for small businesses right now?
In this economy, with inflation, with rising interest rates, cost control is so critical for small businesses. And Jim brings up some really good points. And what we try to stress to our members is they need to allocate resources to have necessary reserves for the technology, the platforms that they need. It's a struggle, but if they don't do it, chances for success start going down dramatically.
Yeah, I agree. And I always see access to capital as something that is really, really important for business owners, but it's even tougher right now. Money markets are tight. Loans are expensive to get. Banks are tightening up their lending, their lending criteria. So, and I think that access to capital is really kind of tightened up in the marketplace. But I would agree with Jim. Technology is a big one, and using your technology, getting the most out of it, is always a challenge. And so many small business owners are often so busy working in their business, right, rather than on their business, and they don't have a lot of time to spend trying to figure all of that stuff out, and so they lose a lot of opportunity for benefits out there. So I totally agree. Before I move on to another topic, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that are watching. You can drop some questions for us in the chat. If you're on Facebook, we'll be monitoring those, and we will take a look at some of those questions and provide some answers towards the end of the hour here. So by all means, go ahead and post some questions. Be happy to talk about those later. So startup, before the call, we were talking a little bit about startups, and we all have a lot of experience with startups. What are some startup mistakes to avoid? I think we've probably all seen folks who have started up their business. You don't know what you don't know, right, in this world. And so you oftentimes walk into a mistake. And wouldn't it be great if you could benefit by knowing and being able to avoid somebody else's mistake? So, David, lawyers, we lawyers often are called in to clean up some mistakes. So what are some startup mistakes that you've seen out there? Would be great.
A good source for all of this is the Small Business Administration. Just look at their statistics. It's staggering. They define a small business as any business of 500 or less employees. In any 1 year, startups, 80% fail. And what's fascinating is that the less number of employees, the higher rate of failure. So it's actually for a small business, members that we work with that maybe have 3, 5, 10, 20 employees, the failure rate in the first year for a startup is higher than 80%. So, that being said, it's critical to really put together your team. And I preach this all day long. I say to my Legal Shield members, your team consists of the attorney, the accountant, a financial advisor, a coach, a mentor, your website master. And if they can do that, chances are they've got a pretty good start. But if they don't do that, the risk of failure, we all know, is going to be sky high.
So get your team together. I think that's absolutely fantastic advice. Anita, that's probably music to your ears, right?
So I'd like to tell a little story because I think it's a great illustration of how all of this conversation is relevant to a small business owner. So PowerLink helps small business owners, especially when they're struggling. And a lot of statistics that you guys shared, we see every day with actual owners, talking to them, trying to figure out, why are you struggling? And the number one reason why they're struggling, why they never get beyond a certain size and then they close, is they get some priorities out of order. So I want to share with you what the order is that PowerLink suggests for small businesses. And it is 3 things. Number 1, revenue. So if you can figure out where your next dollar is going to come from, and I know that sounds simple, but I can't tell you how many business owners I work with that haven't figured out revenue yet. So revenue is number 1. Number 2 is expenses. So if I can bring in $1, but it costs me 99 cents to bring in that dollar, I have a problem. So the cost to bring in that revenue is number 2. And the third is something that I think it was Jim mentioned, which is financial control. So if I know how to bring in $1 and I know my cost to bring in that $1, then how do I control that cost? So what's my controls on how I'm spending that 90 cents or 80 cents or 40 cents or whatever? And most owners think of those 3 things as juggling bowling balls, right? And they tend to focus on one and not the other. They tend to focus on financial controls, and they're sitting in their at home worrying about the numbers, and the door's not, the doorbell's not ringing. So getting them to focus on revenue first is the number 1 thing that PowerLink spends probably 75% of our time on, which is, how do you get $1 to come in every single day, 365 days? And if you can figure that out as a small business owner, a lot of other things fall into place. So revenue is number 1 priority is my comment.
Yeah, having some revenue solves a lot of problems. It's a good problem to have, right? But figuring out how to get it to come in is a challenge, right? It's a challenge for folks who have a concept. I talk to a lot of people who have an idea or a concept, but monetizing it, they don't have the foggiest idea how that actually happens, right?
And COVID really shined a light on that, right? Because all of a sudden, the old ways that a dollar came in, suddenly the dollar wasn't coming in. And so what do? You have to start looking at new ways to bring in a dollar. So that revenue focus has been very educational to me. I mean, I started a couple businesses, but then working with other businesses, I saw it's very easy to get caught up in something else besides revenue because you're juggling everything. So that, and I sadly just watched a PowerLink owner after 2.5 years of working with him. He kept juggling the bowling balls and making mistakes, and he kept stopping the focus on revenue to focus on everything else. And he just told me a couple weeks ago he had to close. So
that's unfortunate.
It's a sad thing to watch, but he just couldn't keep that priority on revenue.
So Jim, what do you see as startup mistakes to avoid that you've seen out there?
Yeah, so I mean, Donnelly Bolin works with what I would consider the traditional small business startup, and I see those as service businesses or individuals who go into business in a trade for themselves. But we also work a lot with technology startups who are formed as Delaware C corporations and take on what we call OPM, other people's money, so angel and venture capital. And so and they're vastly different, right? So the technology startups fail because they spend other people's money recklessly because they think that there's a very easy path back to just going and getting to the next round. And they don't anticipate things that we saw in COVID, right? Where the whole venture and angel community kind of collapsed on itself and valuations were slashed by 70-80%. It then becomes almost impossible to go out and raise additional capital. And convincing them to cut burn and cut spend is very difficult because in their mind their product is this superior product that everyone's going to want. And so we've seen some failures there, but I'll focus my answer on what I'll call the traditional kind of small business, so service businesses and the trades. And we see a couple things. I think I like to have or tell our small businesses, if you have a core product or service that works, then focus your attention on that core product or service. We often see a coffee shop owner, for instance, who does really well, but then wants to branch out into baked goods and breakfast offerings and all these different things, and very quickly the margins are diluted because it's not something that they've fully thought through. They have excess capital and cash flows from the core side of the business and decide that they want to branch out, but I don't think fully think through those types of changes the way they would with their initial business idea. And then the other thing that we see all the time is too willing to please. And so we'll have clients who will not raise prices, will not get rid of the dead weight customers that they have for fear of harm to their reputation or for being the bad guy or whatever. And we have a daycare owner that we do work for, and she has a wait list that's over a year long, but she's the cheapest childcare facility that we've come across. And so you tell her to raise her price, and she doesn't want to raise her price because of the families that she already has there. But she also has customers who don't pay timely, don't pay full amount. And what Anita said earlier, really rings true. It's like if you're spending 90 cents or 99 cents to bring in $1, but then you have 10% attrition or collectability issues, all of a sudden you've essentially worked for that customer for free. So I think those are the two things that I see is, shifting focus away from the core kind of idea or service, and then too much loyalty to a customer base, an installed customer base, versus bringing in higher quality or higher paying new customers.
Yeah, I think some of what you said, and Anita as well, brings home a point that David has made, that you have to put your team together, and the information that you would provide to that coffee shop owner, you sort of bring this knowledge of other customers and what they're doing out there to your small business owner who may not have access to that information by themselves. Setting prices can be something that's very difficult to figure out, right? Or to have confidence that if you raise your prices, it's going to be okay. The marketplace is charging whatever it is. Might be a little bit easier for some products, but services especially, it's difficult to get an idea of what everybody's charging out there. But you bring that valuable information as a business consultant to them and really helps them make more informed decisions about their business. So yeah, really good points there. Melissa, startup mistakes. I'm sure you've seen many along the way.
Yes, most definitely. All the points that have been discussed here, of course, are extremely valid. For me, I think it is just knowing where a lot of these small business owners really, I guess, or how they start their business. David was mentioning that the smaller businesses are the ones that, are at higher risk to close. And what I'm experiencing is the fact that, these business owners have never been business owners before. They have a good idea. They have maybe a passion that they turn into a mission, that they turn into a business. And they sometimes think what's logical is legal. So I'm just going to do it this way because it sounds right, or it feels good, or I've taken advice from people who've been in business for 20 years and they're telling me this is what I should do. They're not getting that team for today. They're not getting that team that knows how to protect that business, the interests of that business, the financial interest, the growth of that business. And so, my discussions have been with those business owners. Why don't you have this team? And it all comes down to, I can't afford it. Yeah. They just don't know that there's so many different resources or companies or associations out there that can give them the type of resources that they need. And so trying to connect them to those resources has been a big thing for me, whether it's through us, through our Legal Shield small business plans, whether it's through my partners who help coach, mentor, or through the SBA, the SBDC, trying to get them in the right environments so they can get the right information. My goal, I tell them, I said, listen, there's no more finger crossing, right? No more stressing, no guessing, no more finger cross or Google decisions ever to be made again. When you have that, what if, can I, should I, what does that mean? How does this work? I don't know what to do. I've never done this before. Those words to me mean stop what you're doing, pick up the phone and talk to your partner, talk to your team.
Right, or ask ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Hey, David, have you had occasion, I know that I've done confession. Somebody calls me, I want to start this XYZ business, and you just know right off the bat, either A, that's a terrible idea, or B, this idea and this person, it's a mismatch. Right? How do you tell them? How do you tell them?
I need to be a good listener. I really have to understand where they're coming from, their background, why they're doing it. And chances are, yes, I may decide that this is just not best for them. That's the last thing they want to hear from me. But, I jokingly tell my Legal Shield members, at the end of the day, what am I? I'm the eternal pessimist. No one calls me to say, Dave, tell me everything good. They want to know what can go wrong, where are the pitfalls. And to pick up on what Melissa, Anita, and what Jim is saying is that people have a great idea. And when they call me, they already jumped into the pool. I'm not even sure they know how to swim. And when I say to them, well, do you have your business plan? Send it over. And there's, of course, silence. I say, let me see your pro forma. Let's look at your numbers. let's see if you really have the wherewithal financially to get started. And once again, the comment is, Dave, you obviously don't understand. I am starting a business and I am just so busy. I don't have time for all of that. And we all know that's a problem. So I get very, very firm with my startup Legal Shield members when I sense they just haven't done their homework. I know they're excited. I know they can't wait to get going, but I've got to slow them down a little bit and explain that you're never going to get to first base if you can't even hit the ball coming in from the pitcher.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say myself is the startup mistakes to avoid is not having a business plan, right? Not preparing a business plan, absolutely crucial. I can't count how many times I have sent somebody to a SBDC, a small business development center, locally or wherever it is that they are, to sign up for some type of a class or seminar or whatever on how to write a business plan or put one together. Or I send them a template of some kind because they have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's absolutely crucial to have something like that in place so that you have some idea of where it is that you're going. And I'll just say for some folks, when they'll call me, the classic is that they want to get a lot of people who want to start like in-home caregiver businesses, right? Highly regulated environment. They have no capital whatsoever, can't afford to hire anybody. That's probably going to be a mismatch for them. Same thing with people who want to open up some type of office cleaning business. I've seen so many of those go out of business. I tell them right up front, this is not a high success type of a business to get in. And then, of course, anybody, and I've represented a lot of them, anybody that wants to buy or open a restaurant, just so that I can go to bed at night without feeling guilty, I tell them all, I'm going to give you the best piece of advice that I can give you about this right up front, right? Don't do it. Remember that. Tough business to make money in, easy business to lose money in, left, right, up, and down. Well, that's a very complicated business to be in unless you've got some experience. So, Jim, I know when we were preparing for the call, you were going to talk a little bit about the employer retention credit. Is that what that's what it is, right? Employer retention credit. You can't basically turn the radio on without hearing some type of an advertisement about it. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least talk a little bit about it. You're a resident CPA, so what do folks know about that?
Yeah, so the employee retention credit, or it's commonly referred to as ERC, is a federal program for 2020, I believe the fourth quarter of 2021 and then 2022, that pays or offsets employer payroll taxes for retaining of employees. Now you have to meet certain criteria, and most of the criteria revolve around declining revenues quarter over quarter versus 2020, which it was the pandemic year. And so if that is something that you haven't looked into as a small business, and your business was negatively impacted by COVID, then it's well worth your time to go investigate. We have clients we have small nonprofit clients, 4 employees who were eligible for $75,000 to $100,000. Now it's based on wages that are paid to those employees and the wages that they earned, but it's not an insignificant dollar amount, especially if you meet the criteria. I think the one caution I'll provide is that there are a lot of firms that came out of the woodwork over the last year or two who will solicit or reach out to you unsolicited and let you know that they can look and see if you're eligible, and if you are, then you would get a credit back, and they'll only charge you whatever 20% of the credit. A lot of those firms are fairly predatory in the way that they carry out the service, because it can be done for pretty cheaply, especially if the core criteria is met. If you have to dive a little deeper into some of the secondary criteria, it gets a little trickier. But we work with a reputable boutique tax firm out of, I think they're based out of Georgia, and they charge $500 flat per employee. Like, no, doesn't matter what the credit is, doesn't matter how many employees you have. It's just $500 a head. And so we know a couple businesses who paid $20,000-$30,000 to a firm to file their credit for them, and with the $500 a head would have been closer to $8,000. So if you haven't looked into the program, you should. If you're thinking about looking into it and someone's reached out to you, then I encourage you to understand the fee structure, and make sure that you're protecting the dollars that really should be funneling to your business, versus a portion of the proceeds coming to you.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Is there a deadline that folks should have in mind? Is this program sunset at some point?
It will, and I don't have the date. I can try and look quickly while we're on here, but yes, I believe there is a deadline, but I know it is still open currently.
Okay. So, yep. So if you've got a small business, or you're working or servicing in the small business marketplace, and you're talking to small business owners, definitely something that you want to mention to them. It is surprising to me sometimes when you encounter folks, even though there's a lot of advertising out there, they still don't have much of an awareness about it, what it even is. They hear the term, but don't know, can't sort of connect it with their own business. So definitely, it's a good piece of advice that you can give somebody to check out for their business.
Mike, just one more point along those lines. I tell our Legal Shield members that when they get these cold calls, and here we are in Phoenix, and these calls are coming out of Chicago, New York, LA, I tell them put the brakes on and work with their team. And if they have an accountant, go through the accountant. Jim makes a great point. So they go through him. So they're working with somebody in their own backyard, that they know Jim, they trust him. And if he needs to work with a firm in Georgia, so be it. But to just start working with a company that is 1,000 miles away, they have no idea who you really are. It's going to be a mistake sooner or later. So you just work with your team. You can avoid so many pitfalls along these lines.
Yeah, your team, your lawyer, your banker, your accountant, you're all going to have somebody that they can refer you to. They'll all have those types of contacts out there in the marketplace, be able to connect you with somebody. Shop local. I love shopping local, so it's always good to work with somebody close to you, but they'll have somebody that can connect you with one way or the other. So let's talk a little bit about employee acquisition and retention in this brave new world that we're in. Who would like to talk a little bit about that? The new environment, hiring, retention. What do you see going on out there? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Sorry, Mike, say it one more time.
We're in sort of in a brave new world, right? Where it's tough to get employees. Sometimes it's tough to find them. How are you seeing folks acquire employees? What are some techniques that they're using to retain employees along the way? Because it's so important to retain them. Hiring folks is so time consuming and expensive for a business, and then the onboarding of folks takes a long time. It's sort of one of those hidden expenses, right? You sort of can't really quantify the cost to your business of having to constantly have a churn of employees going in and out. Any thoughts about that from any of the panel? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our standpoint, and what we see a bunch is, most people leave jobs because of their manager. They will say that they got more money or it's because of money, and sometimes it is. But I think largely people start looking or dissatisfied because of, the individual that they report up through. And so what we actually at our firm just went through a management training program last year. And one of the big takeaways was having a, weekly or bi-weekly, a consistent, even if it's 30 minutes, tag up with your direct reports and making sure that they're fully aware of what they should be focused on, how they're doing, if they're busy, if they're not busy, what their opportunities are long-term at the business, and really keeping them engaged in their contribution and their growth path at the business. And then beyond that, of course, depending on the type of business that you're operating, I mean, everyone's looking for flexibility in their work schedule, flexibility in their work location, and various benefits that are largely a product of COVID. So I think to the extent that you're able to offer those and see positive contribution from those resources, those are valuable things to put on the table when interviewing and trying to sell someone on the opportunity that you have.
Yeah, I think those are all very good points. Engagement especially is super important. It's important if you're worried about your top line, your revenue, you got to make sure that your folks are productive. And so only by having a touch point with them on a regular basis and keeping track of whatever it is that they're doing, will you know whether they're productive or not. You're spending a lot of money. That's probably your number one cost factor in your business. If you have employees, it's wages and all the associated costs with that. So it's really incumbent upon you as a business person to ensure that your folks are productive, and you want to keep them around, right? It's tough to lose people. Yeah. It takes a long time sometimes to acquire them. They're tough to acquire these days, and there's sometimes a long onboarding process to get them up to speed.
And what we've seen is it's really amazing what you learn or what you hear when you have that consistent weekly or bi-weekly 30-minute discussion that, at least for myself, historically hadn't been the case. And so, get a sense that, there was likely a lot of pent up frustration or uncertainty about, role, responsibility, career path, et cetera. But when that built-in discussion's there and it starts to become routine and it starts to become comfortable, I think most people would be surprised with what those employees are then willing to share and reveal and discuss. So I think it's helpful for retaining and employee satisfaction, but I think it's also helpful for running your business and figuring out where you potentially have gaps and deficiencies.
Yeah.
Mike,
Go ahead, David.
Small business owners, they micromanage, and they have to micromanage, but at the same time, I tell them they need to have peripheral vision and peripheral hearing. And if you're walking down the halls of your office, you're watching your salespeople, etc., there are telltale signs when something's just not right. And if they're coming in a little bit late on a Monday morning, leaving early on a Friday, whatever the case may be, the owner needs to pick up on those. And that's the time where maybe there's just a little bit of a sit down along the lines that Jim is suggesting, to make sure that everything is okay and that you really do, that they recognize that you do care and you're listening. And it's just an absolute must for retention. And we all know that. Doing it's hard, I get that, but it's got to be done.
Yeah, you really have to spend some time on that. Anita, what are you coaching small business owners to do in this regard? I think you must be muted. I can't hear you.
That was my fault.
There she
Now
goes.
you can hear me?
Yep.
So I love the comments from today. I think if the owner is the manager, to Jim's point, if that manager is really the owner, our statistics say that 85% of owners have a personality profile that could be regarded as ADD or ADHD, but we're constantly running around trying to make sure we're covering everything, right? And sometimes we make the worst managers because we're simply trying to cover, a 24-hour day in 18 hours, and it's just not possible. But the recommendation that Jim had of having one-on-ones with each person on some regular basis is an outstanding idea. And we've seen that as something that owners won't do until they put it on a calendar because they get busy, right? So even the one-on-one I was supposed to have on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock with Mary, at 8 o'clock, I get a phone call from an upset client and I don't have my meeting with Mary. So the one thing I would say is our basic nature is to try to cover everything, but employees are so important that, I don't know if it's whoever is the most important person in your world, think of each employee as that person and make that one-on-one sacred time, because employees notice when we don't do it. They notice and they remember. And then 6 months from now, when they do start leaving early and coming in late, they've already made a decision. They've already got one foot out the door. So it is really on us to notice and then pull ourselves back into that regular communication. I think that's where we have to kind of own up to that bad habit that a lot of us have of just trying to do too much.
Yeah, and sometimes when we're doing too much, maybe this is a personality issue too for some owners, that they feel that they don't have to be respectful of their employees' time, when that can really be a big mistake to make. If you've asked somebody or told somebody that you're one of your employees that you're going to do something or meet and you're constantly blowing them off, you really convey something about you or about how you value that employee that is not necessarily a good message for you to send. And I think it's tougher to be a business owner or manager these days than perhaps it was 20 years ago, when maybe the perspective from the employee to the employer was a little bit different. But it's just not that way now. You really have to maintain those relationships. And especially as a business owner, one piece of advice when it comes to managing employees, you have to A, have a thick skin, and B, create a safe space. Because if you don't, if you're the blow up person, yeller and screamer, you are never going to find anything out about your business. Nobody's going to talk to you. You'll never get any ideas from your employees. They'll never tell you when something's wrong. You're going to end up being the only person. You have to have all of the ideas, and it just makes your job that much harder if you can't purposefully create a safe space where your employees feel comfortable to say things to you that maybe most people wouldn't want to hear. So I don't know whether I'm effective at doing that, but I do tell my employees all the time, there's nothing that you can say to me that's going to hurt my feelings. So by all means, right? Or my standard line is, I had this idea. Feel free to tell me if it stinks. You can poop all over, but I want to know, right? And sometimes they say, man, that's a terrible one. Okay. Maybe we'll move on to the next thing, right? So let's see, what else? Tech, we've talked about technology, and I do think that it bears more conversation. How is tech influencing business right now? How do we leverage technology to be more profitable, gain more revenue, find more customers? Who wants to think about that? I know that Melissa, during COVID, I know that you probably had to reach people differently using technology. I know that that's been going on for you for sure, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're in a work from any place type of or anywhere type of revolution. That goes without saying. But if it's okay, I want to circle back just a minute on that.
By all means.
One of the things that I'm finding when I'm out there offering our benefits, not only to protect and empower the business, but also their employees. You know, we engage with those employees all the time. We hear their woes, we hear their concerns when we're visiting with them. And I hear a lot of concern about the corporate culture in those businesses. They don't have a sense of belonging. They don't have a sense of worth. And they come in to work with a negative attitude from, you know, every day. And so, you know, in my conversations with small business owners, I always ask them, you know, what is your corporate culture like, or what is your small business culture like? Especially those smaller businesses, as Davis mentioned, and you know, those smaller companies, they're more like families, right? And if you hire a person that doesn't fit in the family, they don't fit in that culture, boy, you can start a problem from the very beginning, right? Just by having that in there. But I ask business owners all the time, you know, do you have a team? Hopefully you're expanding your team, you're having the right people on your team. Well, your employees are part of your team. Have you asked them, you know, some of the questions that maybe you think could help you grow your business? Include them, give them that sense of belonging, give them that sense of worth. And that has really, it's actually strengthened my relationship and conversations with a business owner, which allows me obviously to do more work with them and their employees. But I've got calls back that said, you know, Melissa, I just never thought about it that way. I just kind of thought of them as worker bees. Or I just thought of it as, if we are family, well, you know what, not every family gets along, so we're just going to have to get over it. There's always going to be one everybody argues with. But yeah, and so it's kind of eye-opening, and it goes back to, I think, what Anita was talking about, kind of like the personality print. Sometimes you just got to know how to deal with people and talk to them the appropriate way. There's certain things that will trigger me that maybe you don't even know when you say it, it triggers me, right? And you won't know those things unless you really start to have those conversations. So I just wanted to kind of add that to the notes there.
No, that's awesome. Any reactions to that? There's a lot of good stuff in there.
No, completely agree. And I think that, you know, it's all up and down the organization. And if managers feel a sense of purpose from, you know, ownership, they can then pass that, you know, sense of, you know, community and whatever else down to their direct reports. And the only thing I'll add on now that we're back to the topic is, I think people would be shocked, at least I was, by the things that come out of those meetings and the stuff that people are willing to take on and try, that, you know, reduces the business owner or the manager's effort on certain things. So, you know, we've had people come forward and say, hey, you know, I'd be really interested in, you know, learning about this or doing this. And it's like, okay, well, I never knew that, but if that's something you're interested in, then by all means, you can take it off of my plate. Let me coach you through this a little bit, and then it's yours. So, you know, you'll find the ones that have that internal drive just by having those kind of conversations, and they're usually the ones that will, you know, step up and take added responsibility to kind of further their career aspirations.
Yeah, as a business owner, you're eventually going to have to trust somebody, right? And delegate something to them, because otherwise, again, a lot of business owners are trapped in the I'm working in my business and not on my business problem, where they can't find a way to grow their business because they're the chief cook and bottle washer and they don't trust anybody else to do anything. That's a recipe for failure as far as I'm concerned. Were you going to say
Mike,
something Anita, about
comment.
that?
Yeah, so again, to Jim's point, there is a format that I started with one of my companies that had outside investors. And one of my partners is the one who came from a much bigger company. And he introduced what we now call the quarterly. And the quarterly is generally at a fixed location, but if it's virtual, it has to be virtual, it can be. But a quarterly meeting has an agenda all about employee input and forward thinking. This is where we're thinking we're going to go. This is, you know, what our plans are. And here's the issues that we've seen from last quarter. And it's a kind of a family meeting, right? About lessons learned and about what we want to do over this next quarter. And as your company grows, there's more and more people in this quarterly, and some of the older employees trying to help the newer ones. But ever since I sold that company, but ever since I have done a quarterly meeting, even in my own, and I've recommended it to Powerline companies. It's a time when everyone's together. You're all kind of, it creates that culture that Melissa was talking about in a small business that I haven't seen work any other way but with a quarterly. So besides those one-on-ones, to have quarterlies with everybody is a great idea.
That is a wonderful idea. So why don't we take a couple of questions? And I know Claire, you're sort of, what questions have we received, if any? I can't see them. So what do we have going on there? If you can chime in and let us know.
We've got 2 in the Q&A and a couple in the chat posted.
Okay. So I see somebody, Clark, has written in, does Legal Shield help with annual business minutes? I think that is really a good question for your provider law firm to answer for you. I would really recommend that you talk with them about that in particular. I don't want to answer that question for anybody as well, what they want to do and not do for you under the plan or at an additional charge at a discounted rate. So I think that really would be one to direct to your provider firm. And somebody is talking about, Eric is talking about a personal matter. So why don't we just defer that? Again, that's also one for your provider law firm. If it's me, let us know. You can contact us directly.
Yeah, and both of those, the associates and or member, I know Clark for sure. You can email me, Clark, and Eric. I took down Eric's number, and Mike, I'll give him a call.
Okay, great. And Claire, where is the Q&A? I'm not sure that I can see that. If you can just read off a couple of questions for us, that'd be great. Or the chat.
All right, I'm taking a look. Oh, we got some comments from Jimmy. Most companies that help with businesses with ERC charge a percentage of what the business would receive, usually 10 to 20%, flat $500 per employee. Sounds great. We have someone else asking about the, oh no, that was Clark too, asking about the business minute. But yeah, lots of comments. It looks like we might have covered all of the questions, but if anyone else has questions, go ahead and post those now.
Yeah, we'll be more than happy to answer those. So how are you all seeing business owners leverage technology, for their business? What are you seeing out there?
I'll go back to that for a second, Mike, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Like I was mentioning, we are in that work from anywhere type of, movement, right? And because of the obviously shutdowns and our forced way of having to work, people really started to understand that maybe they don't have to be in that cubicle, right? They don't have to maybe be at that desk, but then there are going to be obviously the business, the jobs that require obviously your physical presence, right? And so in discussions with some of the employers, they have a concern of, is my employee really working from home if they're there? Are they dual tasking? Are they washing the clothes? Are they really focused on the job? Are they taking care of their kids? That type of thing. And so with that being said, I think that goes back to kind of what Anita was saying. Have those meetings with those employees, identify it. If you're that employer and you get to know your employees, you're going to know their worth. You're going to know the trust factor. And I'm seeing, at least with my clients, that allow those that want to work from home, and it doesn't interrupt the performance of their job. It doesn't interrupt the performance of their duties. I'm seeing that those employees seem to be happier, right? Which is obviously best for the employer, but I think it's probably a case by case basis, because I think not everybody could be as diligent and work from home like most, we could get dual tasked or whatever. But yeah, I think it's something that employers should consider if it is something that they can do. I mean, I know that sometimes you have to have that physical presence, but yeah.
Yeah, it can be a little daunting as an employer if your perspective was everybody was at your business or in the office to work with a remote staff. But if you go remote, I'll just speak from my personal experience. It really opens the doors to access to employees that I never would have been able to bring on before because they're all over the place. So, until very recently, I had a couple of attorneys who lived in Florida that worked for me. And I have employees all over the state of Pennsylvania that I never would have been able to hire, but for the fact that we really transitioned to remote work in 2019 before the pandemic. And that was one of the specific purposes to shrink down our space, return some quality of life to our employees that they could work from home and not fight traffic and pay for parking and all those other types of things, but also that I would be able to find people all over the place. So I just got done with a round of interviews and several of the candidates are just not from Pittsburgh. And I'm not going to see them in the office unless they travel here from wherever it is that they already come in. I'll also say one of the things I see is connectivity, right? Businesses maybe can leverage technology to have a greater level of connectivity with their customers, not just phone calls and emails, but texting. We use a lot of text messages with our customers and they really like it. You sort of have to meet them where they are in a service related business to let them know you're trying to get a hold of them, providing them with updates, communicating with them in ways that are meaningful to them. So we haven't started doing consults via Instagram, but I'm sure that I probably have a segment of my client base that would love that, but I'm just not ready for that. And I'm not doing TikTok, I'll tell you that. Anita?
Two comments about manufacturing and retail, both business models that require people to be in, the building. And what we saw with our clients was they started to create hybrid jobs where, like for manufacturing, for example, it was an international manufacturer. So they started allowing production people to work from home a portion of the time by picking up customer calls because they were getting customer calls from, 3 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight, but they were all going to voicemail. This way, a production person could work fewer hours in the office and take some of those calls, have them forwarded to a cell phone, and they could actually take customer orders, put them right into their CRM from home and create a hybrid job. Same with retail. Fewer hours in the store, more on Instagram and social media, helping post products, respond to customer inquiries, and still allow an employee to, have more hours, but not necessarily all of them in store. So I thought that was interesting how they were using technology to create hybrid jobs.
Yeah, I had a technology experience with a restaurant here locally. My daughter works in Lawrenceville, and I said, how about I bring you down some lunch, and we'll grab lunch together. And I said, there's this cowgirl, something cowgirl. I can't remember what the name of it is. I'll remember. But anyway, there's a little restaurant down there. Have you been there before? She goes, I've never heard of it. Well, what I've come to determine is it's a ghost kitchen, and it's only online, and you have to go pick it up, or they'll do Uber and all that kind of stuff. That's an interesting twist, right? Technology twist. And it was kind of funny. It was in a back alley somewhere, and I had to go pick it up. That was like some kind of an illegal exchange, but the food was great. And it took them like 3 minutes to make my food. It was fantastic. So I'll have to remember the name of that restaurant. But that was an interesting restaurant style tech leverage, right?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Very, very interesting.
We've got a couple of questions directed at Jim, I believe. The first one is for the CPA. What is the best type of software that should be used for daily accounting?
QuickBooks Online is the default answer, but I think the other platform that we see every once in a while is Xero, which is Xero. But largely, if you're a small business, QuickBooks Online is the best platform. It has a ton of functionality. It syncs with a bunch of other platforms that make kind of getting things into the books, very automated. So that would be my suggestion for accounting platforms.
And Jim, I would guess that most CPAs are very familiar with that platform as well if you're working with somebody, right?
Yes, I mean, it depends. There are a lot of CPAs out there that will still direct you toward QuickBooks Desktop, which we generally recommend against because it lacks a lot of the functionality that QuickBooks Online brings. It lacks a lot of the software automation that QuickBooks Online brings. And yes, there are a lot of ways to use QuickBooks Online. So finding a firm that has a very strong grasp of the capability that it has and features that it has, and then scoping the product that you need with your business is really important because QuickBooks Online has 5 or so tiers of their platform that get more and more complicated. So figuring out, largely when we talk to a business, we talk about what they're trying to see in their financial statements, what they want to track, what's important to them, and from there we can get them into the appropriate programming QuickBooks Online.
We have some more questions coming in, but here's another accounting one just while we're on you, Jim. How many hours can contractors work within a 1099?
I mean, legal can probably help me here also, but I don't think that hours dictates whether you're 1099 or W-2. I think it's largely control based and who directs the work. So I would say there is no hours minimum or maximum for a 1099 contractor. You do have to issue a 1099 as if you pay a contractor more than, I think, $600.
David, you want to comment on that? I think Jim's exactly right?
The number of hours is only one of many factors. If you go on the IRS website, they have a 20 factor test, 40 factor test. But the fear is that when you're dealing with whether it's a state or federal agency, their whole focus is they want employees, not independent contractors. And with our small businesses, we make it very clear, if you're hiring independent contractors, you need an excellent agreement to start with, because that's the first thing that's going to be asked for in an IRS audit. And we're really going to walk them through as best we can to make sure that, and Jim used the magic word, control. The more control, the more somebody is an employee. But when you're dealing with the Labor Department, IRS, etc., they've already made up their minds that this should be an employee, and the burden is on the employer to convince them otherwise. And again, this is where we're talking about planning ahead of time, really understanding what your business model is to make sure all of that is going to work for your business.
Yeah, that's one of those urban legends that a lot of business owners maybe heard from somewhere along the way, and they have a complete misunderstanding about what an employee is and what an independent contractor / 1099 worker is. And you can't make somebody an independent contractor and avoid paying wage taxes by having them sign a piece of paper that says that they're an independent contractor. The government, that's not dispositive. So there are a lot of factors, and that's a great thing to talk to your lawyer about. And I think that your CPA will tell you, you should really talk to your lawyer about that, just like Jim just did. Claire, do you want to tee up a couple other questions for us?
Yeah, so I see Jim just responded to another kind of accounting question. If a business is
Right.
closing, can they retroactively apply for ERC? So Jim will email you, or you can email him if he doesn't have your contact information, whatever you want to put in the chat. But another question someone asked is, since everyone is leaning towards working out of the office, what would everyone consider to be the best way of communicating with your team?
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's really important. I think if you make the decision to either go the remote route or go the flexible hybrid route, collaboration tools and platforms become really important. So I know a lot of the businesses that we work with obviously use Zoom or the Teams suite of products. If you don't have Microsoft Teams, then a combination of Zoom, and a lot of our clients use Slack, which is a kind of, if you think back to 20 years ago, the AOL Instant Messenger it's essentially a redevelopment of that platform. Teams has their own version of that. So if you're operating in Teams, then that's already available. But yeah, the collaboration tools become really important. And then there's document storage. And again, if you're on Teams, I think you have access to OneDrive. If you're not, then there are platforms like Dropbox or Box that can serve that purpose. So yeah, that's a really important consideration whenever you make the decision to go that route with remote or hybrid work.
Yeah, if you have Microsoft Microsoft for Small Business or Office 365 subscription, you may or may not realize that you have access to a whole host of applications, including Teams, which is a Zoom. It's a Zoom competitor. A lot of people became more familiar with Teams during COVID because we had to communicate, and they were already paying. They're already paying for it. So,
Right.
You might, if you use Microsoft, you may want to try their tools first, see if you like them. Some like Teams, some hate Teams. And so you may find some other tools that you would want to use. Microsoft has SharePoint, which is a database program. We use that. Not the easiest thing to navigate, but it works very well once you figure it out. So, but I'll just say my only comment is that you probably are going to need multiple platforms to communicate with your team on, because if the internet goes out, Teams isn't and Zoom isn't going to work. So they need to have those applications on their mobile phones so that you can use them there, or you need some other platform like a texting platform like GroupMe or something like that. But we have multiple platforms that we use to communicate with folks, depending on where they are and what's going on. So, and some people like certain things and some people like other things. GroupMe seems to work pretty well for the texting platform. So, any other comments on that?
I was gonna, someone just asked, do you feel more productive with iPhone or Android?
Android.
Yeah, I don't have an Android experience, so I only know iPhone. I can't really comment on the Android experience. So, all right. Well, I think we're a little beyond the hour. So any final words from any members on the panel before I let you all go and we sign off? Any final words of wisdom for our small business folks?
Mike, from a Legal Shield perspective, we encourage our small businesses to call us. It may be that we don't have the answer every time, but where else can you call, get a return call from an attorney the same day, talk to an experienced attorney, get some direction, and spotting the issues is half the battle, as we all know. And I just find that the Legal Shield members that really use us, they are the ones that are successful. And I've been here long enough to track them. And when they call me, they say, Dave, remember 6 years ago, I just started. Well, I now have 15 employees. My gross revenues just exceeded $1.5 million. Why? Because they know how to use Legal Shield. And it just doesn't get any better than that. I'm always saying Legal Shield is the best kept secret out there, and it should not be, by the way.
That's great. I want to piggyback right off of that, David, for sure. Something you said was so important. I talk about, when you're not sure, right, that what if, can I, should I, whatever. I say, never stress, never guess, tap the app and ask. You may not always get the answer you want to hear, but you're going to get the right answer. You're going to get the answer that's going to protect you. And I love how you said that. I really do appreciate that. And you are right. If there is any of our Legal Shield sales family on this call today, I want to encourage them. Get out there and say hello to that business community. They don't know we're here. They don't know the resources that they could have for their business, the partners that they have, partners like, obviously, Miles, right? Davis Miles or the Fiffic Law Group, partners that obviously are coming through, those partners that bring us all here together with Miss Anita and Jim as well, that are here, that provide resources to small business owners. Get out there and say hello. They need friends. They need clients. You can be both. Just get out there and share those resources.
Anita, if anybody has a small business out there that needs a little advisory board, I assume you can connect them up with that, right?
Yep, my email is anita@powerlink.org. And if anybody has a small business and you're struggling in any way, all our PowerLink clients do get a Legal Shield membership as part of their program. But we're here, and what we find is any small business that's struggling in any way, it's probably because of access to information. They just don't know. And we can help them with that.
And Jim,
And we endorse your program. It's a fantastic one for our owners.
thank you. And Jim,
Anita, did you say .org? Anita, is that what you said?
.org.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And Jim, I think you put your email out there for folks to talk to you about
Yeah.
accounting and CPA related issues. Jim's firm comes with my own personal recommendation, since they are our accounting firm, and they really do good work. And they are also generous co-hosts with us on a variety of small business related webinars from time to time that you can find on our Eventbrite page. And I highly encourage you to attend one, because they've got all kinds of great information, especially on marketing and business services, and things that you should be doing with your business. They always have great stuff to share with us all. So with that, on behalf of all the viewers, I'm just going to thank the panel, because you're all wonderful, and I really appreciate all of the advice and information that you've shared with everybody. And on behalf of the panel, everybody that's been viewing and attending, and those who will be viewing, because this will be recorded and online later for others to see, thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you soon. So,
Yep. Thanks,
bye-bye,
everyone.
everybody.